Welcome to the world of science fiction Neon's Alien. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell so you never miss a new story from Neon's Alien universe. The war was over. Raylan stood at the edge of the battlefield, watching the last enemy ship burn in the sky. The ground was cracked, blackened from days of fire and bombing. Smoke still rose from broken towers in the distance. The enemy had fallen. The human alliance had won. Raylan didn't feel like a hero. His uniform was torn. His body was bruised. His hands were dirty from pulling survivors out of rubble. He hadn't fought for glory. He had fought to protect his team and survive. But the generals had different ideas. The next day, in the center of the alien capital, a victory ceremony was held. Soldiers stood in lines. Alien leaders, nobles, and warlords watched from their tall platforms. Music played. Lights flashed. The people cheered. Then the announcement came. For his bravery and service, and the alien High Lord spoke, we reward human Commander Raylan with a gift worthy of his honor. Raylan stepped forward. He expected a medal, maybe a ship, or a rare piece of alien tech. But what he saw shocked him. Two guards walked forward, dragging a girl in chains. She was alien, tall, slim, with soft violet skin and glowing silver eyes. Her dark hair hung in tangled ropes over her shoulders. Her clothes were torn and dusty. Her wrists were bound tightly with thick cuffs. She didn't speak. She didn't look up. "She is yours," the High Lord said. "A trophy from the defeated people. Yours to use, own, or discard." The crowd clapped. Raylan didn't move. He looked at the girl, then at the chains, then back at the smiling alien lords. His jaw tightened. His heart pounded. This wasn't a gift. This was slavery. Silence fell as Raylan stepped forward. He didn't take the chain. He didn't bow or smile. He walked slowly to the girl. She didn't flinch. She didn't even breathe. Then, to everyone's shock, Raylan knelt beside her and pulled a small tool from his belt. Carefully, he unlocked the shackles around her wrists. The metal dropped to the ground with a loud clink. The alien crowd gasped. The High Lord stood up. "What are you doing, human?" Raylan looked him in the eye. "She's not a prize," he said calmly. "She's a person." Then he turned back to the girl. "You're free now." The girl looked up, just for a moment. Her eyes were wide, with confusion. She didn't understand. Raylan stood and took a step back. "You can walk away, or come with me. It's your choice." The girl didn't move. She looked down again, shaking slightly. The High Lord growled, "This is an insult to our traditions." Raylan didn't care. "Then your traditions are broken." He turned and walked away, leaving the stunned crowd behind. Later that night, back at his small barrack outside the city, Raylan sat by a quiet fire. The air was cold. The war-torn field stretched far into the night. He heard soft footsteps behind him. It was her. She had followed him, still barefoot, still silent. She stood at the edge of the firelight, her eyes locked on him like a lost animal, unsure whether to flee or stay. Raylan didn't speak. He just nodded once and motioned for her to sit. Slowly, she came closer. She didn't sit beside him. She knelt, head down, hands folded. Raylan sighed. "You don't have to do that." She didn't respond. He looked at her again. Her face was young but tired. She looked like someone who had been broken too many times. "What's your name?" he asked gently. No answer. He pointed to himself. "Raylan." Then he pointed to her. She opened her mouth but said nothing. Then, after a long pause, she whispered, "Lariah." Her voice was soft, afraid. Raylan nodded. "Nice to meet you, Lariah." She looked at him, confused. He smiled. "You're safe, now." She looked down again, unsure of what that meant. That night, she curled up in the corner of his room and slept on the floor. Raylan offered her a blanket, but she didn't take it. Maybe she thought it was another test. Maybe she didn't believe this was real. As he lay in his bed, Raylan stared at the ceiling. He had seen many things in war: loss, pain, cruelty. But today, what he had been given wasn't a reward, it was a responsibility. And he knew, deep in his heart, that this was only the beginning. Liriah didn't run. She could have escaped during the night. There were no chains, no locked doors, no guards. But when the sun rose, she was still there, sitting quietly on the cold floor beside Raylan's bed, her knees pulled to her chest, eyes wide open and staring at nothing. Raylan woke with a stretch and looked down. "You didn't sleep much, huh?" She didn't reply. "You know, the bed's big enough for two," he said, trying to sound kind. "Not saying you have to, just offering." She shook her head slowly. Raylan nodded. "All right, just don't hurt your back." He stood and walked to the small cooking unit in the corner. As the machine hummed, he glanced over at her. She hadn't moved, not 1 inch, like she was waiting for something, or someone. Later that morning, he handed her a warm meal, simple earth food, soft bread, some protein, a hot drink. She stared then at him. Her hands trembled as she took it, as if it might vanish. But before she took a bite, she looked up, eyes wide with fear. "Is this a test?" Raylan froze. "What? If I eat without asking, will I be punished?" He sat down slowly, heart heavy. "Liriah, I'm not going to hurt you. I don't want anything from you. You're free." She frowned. "Free?" "Yes. You don't have to serve me. You don't belong to me. You can do what you want." She looked at the food again, then carefully placed it on the floor beside her and folded her hands. "I will wait until I am told." Raylan exhaled. This isn't how it works. But to her, it was how it worked. It was all she had ever known. Days passed. Raylan tried to treat her like a guest. He gave her space, let her choose her own clothes from the market, offered her a bed, even played soft music from Earth. She followed him everywhere, but never walked ahead, never looked around freely. Always 2 steps behind. One afternoon, he brought her to a cliffside garden that had somehow survived the war. Birds flew high. Alien trees rustled in the soft wind. Raylan sat on a stone bench. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Liriah stood behind him. "You can sit too, you know." She didn't move. He stood, walked back to her, and pointed to the flowers. "You can touch them, smell them, do anything. No one's watching." She looked confused. "You allow this?" "I'm not your master," he said again. "You don't need permission." Her hands shook as she reached out and gently touched a red flower. Her fingers lingered on its soft petals. Her eyes widened. "It's soft," she whispered. He smiled. "Yeah, kinda nice, right?" Liriah turned to him, something flickering in her eyes. "Why are you kind to me?" Raylan paused. "Because you deserve it." She said nothing after that, but she didn't let go of the flower either. That night, she stood by his door after dinner. "I have finished cleaning the room," she said, "and folded your clothes. May I ask something now?" He blinked. "You didn't have to do any of that. I wanted to be useful. You already are, just by being here." She looked at the floor. "Then, may I ask what you want me to be?" Raylan walked over, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "I want you to be you." Her lips parted. "I don't know who that is." "Then maybe it's time to find out." A few days later, something different happened. They sat together at the small table, eating in silence. Raylan was about to ask her about her day when Liriah gently placed her spoon down. "No," she said softly. He blinked. "No?" She nodded. "You were going to ask if I want more food. The answer is no." For a moment, he wasn't sure whether to laugh or cry. Instead, he smiled. "Good. Saying what you want. That's a start." She seemed unsure. Was that wrong? No, that was perfect. She lowered her head, and for the first time, he saw it. Something different in her expression. Not fear, but the tiniest spark of pride. That night, while walking outside, he saw her staring up at the stars. He joined her. "They're beautiful," he said. She didn't answer right away. Then she asked, "Do you miss your world?" He nodded. "Sometimes." She hesitated. "Would you return if you could?" Raylan thought for a moment. "I don't know. Some things, some people, make you want to stay." Liraya turned to him, her silver eyes reflecting the stars. But she said nothing. She didn't have to. For the first time, silence felt safe. Liraya stood in front of the mirror, staring at her reflection. She wore a simple dress, light blue, soft and loose. Her hair was no longer knotted. It now fell smoothly down her back, tied with a ribbon Raylan had offered her days ago. But it wasn't the dress or the ribbon she stared at. It was her face. It didn't look scared anymore. It looked unfamiliar, like someone slowly waking up. Raylan called from the kitchen. "Liraya, dinner's ready. Want to eat with me tonight?" There was a pause, a long pause. Then, softly, she replied, "No." Raylan peeked around the corner, smiling. "No?" She looked at him. Her hands were trembling slightly. "I want to eat alone tonight." He walked to her and didn't push. "All right, that's your choice." She blinked. "I won't be punished?" Raylan shook his head gently. "Liraya, saying no is not wrong. It just means you're deciding for yourself. That's what freedom is." She sat down at the table alone. Her heart was beating fast, faster than when she had been chased through war zones. This wasn't fear of pain. This was fear of being seen as something more than just a slave. Later that evening, Raylan returned from checking defense drones. When he opened the door, he found something surprising. Liraya was humming, not loudly, not confidently, just a soft sound, barely more than a whisper. But it was a melody. He smiled and stood silently, listening. She stopped when she saw him. I'm sorry. Was that noise bothering you?" "No," he said warmly. "That was you. And that was beautiful." She lowered her head again, but this time she smiled, just barely. The next day, Raylan brought her to the outer market. It was a busy area full of aliens from many species, colors, and languages. Liraya stuck close to him, but she didn't walk behind like before. She walked beside him now. They passed a stand of brightly colored fabrics. One of the sellers, a tall, yellow-scaled merchant, noticed her. His smile faded and he stepped forward. Well, I remember that face," he said. "Didn't think the humans would keep their pets this long." Raylan stepped forward, voice calm, but firm. "She's not a pet or a slave." The merchant laughed. "Then what is she?" Before Raylan could reply, Liraya raised her head. "I am free." The merchant blinked. "What did you say?" "I said," she repeated louder this time, "I am free." The market stall grew quiet. Raylan stood still, watching her, not stepping in. She stared the merchant down, not with anger, but with certainty. And then she walked away on her own. Raylan caught up to her down the street. "You didn't need me back there." She looked straight ahead. "No, I didn't." That night, as they sat near the fire, Raylan handed her a small gift. She opened the box and found a pendant, silver, shaped like a flame. "What is this?" she asked. "It's a symbol on my home planet," he explained. "It means rebirth, rising from ashes." She stared at it for a long time. Then she placed it around her neck, slowly. "I don't know who I was," she whispered, "but I think I'm starting to find who I am now." Raylan looked at her, the firelight dancing in her silver eyes. "You're strong," he said. "You've always been strong." "No," she corrected. "I was silent. That is not the same. He nodded. But now you're speaking, and I hear you. Late in the night, Lariah stood alone in the garden, looking up at the moons. A breeze passed through the flowers. She whispered to the stars, I said no, and I'm still here. The wind didn't answer, but something inside her did. Something that had been chained far longer than her hands or her feet. Her voice. The night was quiet, too quiet. Raylan sat outside their small home, watching the stars above Zinara's scarred horizon. Since the war ended, peace had settled over most of the colony. But in the shadows, peace was fragile and dangerous. Inside, Lariah carefully watered the small garden she had planted herself. Alien herbs mixed with earth seeds Raylan had brought. She hummed softly, almost like a forgotten lullaby she didn't even know she remembered. Then the alarm buzzed. Just once. A soft beep-beep from Raylan's wristcom. It was a silent tripwire warning. Motion. Perimeter breach. Raylan stood up fast, eyes sharp. He didn't say a word to Lariah, but she saw his body tense. She knew something was wrong. Suddenly, all the warmth in the air disappeared. The next second, the window exploded. A shadow burst through the smoke. Tall, armored, fast. Raylan tackled. Lariah to the floor just as a plasma bolt flew past them and burned a hole into the wall. Stay down, he shouted, grabbing the hidden weapon under the table. But Lariah didn't freeze. She crawled to the far side of the room and grabbed a broken lamp. It wasn't much, but it was something. Another figure entered through the back. Raylan fired once, hitting the attacker in the shoulder. The intruder crashed into the wall. Then the third came, fast and silent. This one lunged straight at Lariah. She screamed, but not in fear, in fury, and threw the lamp directly at his face. It shattered. Raylan tackled the attacker before he could recover and knocked him out with a powerful blow. 3 down. But the damage was done. After the fight, emergency lights turned the house red. Smoke rose from the broken walls. Lariah sat on the floor, shaking. Raylan kneeled beside her, checking for wounds. Are you okay? Are you hurt? She shook her head. No, I'm fine. I didn't think they would try to take me again. Raylan's face darkened. They weren't here to reclaim you. They were here to punish me. She looked up. For what? For freeing you, he said. For treating you like more than a thing. Outside, the patrols arrived, late as always. Soldiers asked questions. Raylan answered with cold anger. He could see it in their faces. Some were upset this happened. Others weren't surprised at all. One of the officers muttered, You brought this on yourself, human. That girl's marked property in some circles. Raylan stepped forward. Say that again. But Lariah placed her hand on his chest. No, not here. Not now. That night they sat in the dark, watching the stars. There was a deep cut on Lariah's shoulder, but she didn't flinch as Raylan wrapped the bandage. You fought back, he whispered. I didn't want to be taken again, she said. Not after learning how to breathe. Raylan clenched his fist. This isn't right. You deserve to walk freely in the sun, without looking over your shoulder. Lariah looked at him carefully. You could still send me away, you know. Back to Earth. You don't owe me anything. Raylan met her eyes. No, I don't. But I care. She lowered her gaze. And if they come again? They will, he said. Unless I make sure the law protects you. Her voice was soft. What law? Raylan looked toward the capital city. One that even they can't break. But it comes with a cost. The next morning, Raylan met with an old diplomat, a half-blind alien scholar who once helped write peace laws across colonies. There is one way, the old man said, but it's rarely used. I don't care how rare it is, Raylan said. What is it? The old diplomat leaned forward. If you marry her, officially, legally, she becomes your bonded partner. No one can claim her after that, not even nobles. Raylan sat back. Marriage? She doesn't need to be a slave, the man continued. She can be a citizen, a wife, not owned, but chosen. Back at home, Raylan told her everything. Lyraya listened quietly. Then she stood, walked to the table, and gently removed the pendant he gave her. He froze, thinking she was leaving, but instead, she placed it in his hand and said, "Put it on me again, not as a gift, as a vow." Raylan looked at her, heart pounding. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "I want to be yours," she said softly. "Not by chains, but by choice." And in that moment, there were no broken walls, no enemies, no war, only two souls, choosing each other. Rain fell on the city of Zainara for the first time in weeks. It wasn't a heavy rain, just a soft mist that made the rooftops shine and the streets smell like fresh soil. Most people stayed indoors, but two figures stood outside the registry of interplanetary bonds. Raylan wore his old battle jacket patched at the sleeve. Lyraya wore a simple robe with a small silver flame at her neck, the pendant he'd given her. Neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't cold, it was full of meaning. Inside, the registry, an old alien clerk glanced at their forms. Her eyes flicked between Raylan and Lyraya. "You're sure about this?" she asked slowly. "Once the bond is sealed under the Unity Code, it cannot be undone. She becomes your equal, by law and name." Raylan nodded. "That's what I want." Lyraya stepped forward. "That's what I want." The clerk tilted her head. "Few would take this step, a human and an ex-slave. It will not be accepted easily." Raylan didn't hesitate. "It doesn't need to be accepted, just recognized." The clerk gave a thin smile. "Then place your hands on the stone." They stepped forward. A glowing stone slab sat between them, ancient and humming with quiet energy. It was the kind of object used for peace treaties, military oaths, and rare soul bonds. Raylan placed his hand on it. Lyraya followed, her fingers brushing his. A bright light burst from the stone, pulsing with a rhythm that felt like a heartbeat. The clerk stepped back. "The flame has accepted your bond, it is done." Outside, they walked in silence again. The rain had stopped. Lyraya's voice broke the quiet. "I thought it would feel heavier." Raylan looked over. "You mean marriage?" She nodded. "But it doesn't. It feels light." He smiled. "That's how it's supposed to feel." She stopped walking and turned to him. "I'm not afraid anymore." Raylan stopped too. She added, "Not of the chains, not of being owned, but of standing beside someone, as their equal." Raylan took her hands gently. "You've always been equal. The world just tried to make you forget." Her voice cracked. "I'm remembering now." But peace never lasts long for those who challenge power. Across the city, in the mansion of Lord Vornar, the same noble who once gifted Lyraya, anger boiled. He slammed a crystal across the wall. "They bonded under law? She was mine." Eeyore, cloaked figure, bowed. "The fire bond cannot be broken, my lord, not without fatal consequences." Vornar's eyes narrowed. "Then we'll force the human to break it himself." The next day, Raylan and Lyraya returned home. The house was quiet, repaired, rebuilt. Neighbors watched them from their windows. Some nodded in respect. Others turned away in disgust. A group of children passed them on the street. One child whispered, "Is she really his wife?" Another giggled, "But she's not even human." Lyraya smiled softly. She didn't lower her head. She squeezed Raylan's hand. "Let them look." Inside the home, a gift basket sat on the table. No note. Raylan opened it slowly. Inside, a single red feather. His heart dropped. "What is it?" Lyraya asked. He answered, quietly, "A warning." That night, Lyraya couldn't sleep. She stood by the window, staring into the dark. Raylan joined her. "They won't stop, will they?" "No," she whispered. "They see me as stolen property, and you as a thief." but we did nothing wrong. Truth doesn't always matter to the powerful. Raylan touched her shoulder. Then we stand together. No matter what comes. She turned to him. You already gave me freedom. Then a name. Now you're offering your life. He smiled. Maybe you were the one saving mine all along. The stars outside shimmered. The flame band on her neck glowed brighter than ever. She was no longer a gift, no longer property, no longer a silent girl in chains. She was a wife, a fighter, and soon, she would prove she was far more than anyone ever expected. The royal court of Zanara had never seen anything like it. The room, usually reserved for nobles and generals, was packed with murmuring voices. Officials lined the walls, guards held their weapons tight, and news drones hovered quietly overhead. Whispers passed between nobles like sparks in dry grass. Everyone was waiting to see her, the slave girl who had become the human's wife, the one who broke tradition, the one they wanted to forget. The heavy doors creaked open, gasps filled the air, but Loraya did not walk in with her head bowed. She did not wear chains. She did not hide behind Raylan. She walked proudly at his side wearing a gown of soft silver and deep violet, colors of the old royalty once stripped from her people. Her hair flowed freely down her back. The flame pendant shimmered against her chest. No one dared stop them as they walked straight to the central platform. Raylan's voice echoed across the room. We come not to beg, but to stand. The High Counselor narrowed his eyes. You, bring your bonded partner here as if she belongs in this hall. She belongs anywhere I do, Raylan replied firmly. Loraya stepped forward. Her voice, once soft as wind, now rang clear. I was chained in this court once, given as a gift. I stood in silence, because silence was all I was taught. She took a breath. But today I speak, because I have chosen to. The room grew tense. Some council members looked shocked. Others looked disgusted. Lord Vornar rose from his seat, face tight with rage. This is mockery. A human consort and a former slave. This is not a bond. This is corruption of law. Raylan didn't flinch. The law was written to protect life and choice. We followed it. You only hate that it worked. Vornar turned toward the council. I demand the bond be revoked. She was mine. Stolen. Loraya lifted her chin. You lost the right to call me anything the moment you put shackles on me. Vornar raised his hand to strike her even in the court, but he never got the chance. Raylan stepped between them in a blink, grabbing Vornar's wrist mid-air. The fireband on Raylan's arm flared, burning Vornar's skin. He screamed and fell back. The flames didn't harm anyone else, but they glowed brighter as if alive. The counselor stood and raised her hand. Enough! The chamber fell silent. She turned to Vornar. You violated royal space, raised a hand in court, and ignored the will of the law. Vornar was dragged out by guards shouting threats, but no one listened. That night, the skies above Zanara lit up with celebration fires. Across the colony, screens showed the image of Raylan and Loraya standing side by side before the council, hands linked, flames surrounding them. It became a symbol, not of rebellion, but of change. Back home, Loraya sat on the edge of the bed, her fingers running over the edge of her pendant. Raylan knelt beside her, smiling softly. You burned brighter than the court lights today. She looked at him. I was terrified. You didn't show it. I wasn't afraid of them, she whispered. I was afraid of what would happen if they made you choose between protecting me or leaving this world behind. Raylan tilted his head. That choice was made a long time ago. She turned to him. He gently brushed a lock of hair behind her ear. And I'd make it again. Every time. Suddenly, an alarm buzzed. Outside, a guard shouted, Movement in the eastern ridge. Raylan stood, readying his weapon. Loraya rose too, but this time she didn't stand behind him. She picked up the energy staff from the wall and activated it with a steady hum. Raylan blinked. "You know how to use that?" "I learned," she said. "From who?" She smiled. "From watching you." Together they walked into the night, no longer as master and rescued, no longer as soldier and silent girl, but as partners, as fire-bonded equals, and as husband and wife. The wind howled through the eastern cliffs of Zinara. Black dropships streaked across the sky, their shadows swallowing the moonlight. Sirens screamed through the capital, but it was already too late. Lord Vornar had returned, not with words, but with war. At the head of an outlaw fleet, he defied the council's ruling. He claimed Raylan had tainted their honor and stolen what was his. He promised to take Lyrrea back and kill anyone who stood in his way. The palace guards were overwhelmed within minutes. Raylan stood in the courtyard, firing round after round into the invaders. Plasma bolts flew past him, lighting up the night. Behind him, Lyrrea stood armed, not hiding, not running, but leading the line of defenders. "Cover the north side," she shouted to the soldiers. "Hold the gate." Raylan glanced at her, between bursts. "You sure you're not royalty?" She smirked. "Only by bond." A bolt flew close. Raylan pushed her down, taking the hit to his side. He groaned and dropped to one knee. "Raylan," she shouted, rushing to his side. He held up a hand. "I'm fine, just burned." But Lyrrea saw the blood, and she saw something else. Vornar, stepping through the smoke, untouched, armored in gold and black, with his weapon drawn, his eyes locked onto Lyrrea. "Return to me," he hissed, "and I'll spare him." "Spare." She stood slowly, weapon shaking in her hand. "No," she said, her voice steady. "I will never belong to you again." Vornar's blade glowed red. "Then watch him die." But before he could strike, something changed. The flame pendant around. Lyrea's neck blazed like a sun. She didn't run. She stepped forward. The fire didn't burn her. It wrapped around her arms, her chest, her body, becoming armor made of light. Even Vornar stepped back. What are you?" She raised her staff high. "I am no one's slave," she said. "I am the flame that was never yours to hold." And then she charged. Their weapons clashed in a storm of energy. Raylan, still bleeding, could only watch as Lyrrea, his wife, his partner, fought not for survival, but for him. The battle lasted minutes that felt like lifetimes. Lyrrea moved with speed and fire, every step powered by years of silence, fear, and stolen freedom. She struck hard, dodged fast, and drove Vornar back inch by inch. In a final move, she disarmed him, his weapon spinning across the courtyard. She stood over him, weapon pointed to his chest. "Kill me," he spat. But she didn't. She turned away. "You already lost." Later, when the sun rose, the battlefield was quiet. Soldiers from both sides stood watching as the council arrived in ships of silver light. Vornar was taken into custody, his army scattered, and standing in the center of it all, hand in hand, were Raylan and Lyrrea, not chained, not owned, but chosen. Back in their home, Raylan sat on the bed as Lyrrea gently cleaned the burn on his ribs. "You saved me," he whispered. She nodded. "You saved me first." "I gave you freedom," he said. "You gave me everything else." She smiled. "That's how bonds work. Fire is shared." Weeks later, a statue was raised in the capital square. It did not show Raylan as a hero. It did not show Lyrrea in chains. It showed both of them, side by side, standing as equals. One human, one alien, one fire. And that is how the story ended. Girl once given as a prize became a queen in her own right. A soldier who wanted nothing became a legend. And together, they reminded the galaxy of something too many had forgotten. Kindness is not weakness. Love is not property. And no one, no matter where they come from, is born to be silent.